So welcome everybody. My name is Joshua Bledgy. I'm a Learning Solutions Engineer for ELB Learning. I've been with ELB for almost 8 years now, and about four, going on 5 years in this capacity here as a Learning Solution Engineer. And what I really love about my job is that I get to kind of help people understand our products better. And so that's what these webinars for Learning Lab Live are all about, is to provide some product education, tips and tricks, and just kind of get everybody together to have some participation in social learning here. So let's talk about what a library object is. So when we're talking about library object, a library object is a templatized element or component for that can be reused across Lectora projects. It can also be known as maybe a template or a widget, or sometimes maybe just an interaction, but it's anything that's going to be templatized and reusable. And you'll see that those can be broken down in different kind of categories here in just a little bit. Its main purpose is to ensure that there's consistency and speed to your development process. So making sure everything looks cohesive and also gives you something where you can actually speed up your development versus having to rebuild everything every single time as you're building your projects. In Lectora Online, like I mentioned earlier, library objects are shared by the whole team. Lectora Desktop, just due to its nature, being a desktop uh, application, you're not sharing this library with your team, but when you're using it online, you can share it across your team, which makes it very useful for collaboration. And then when used with a base template and other settings within Lectora, such as text styles, it can create an organization's kind of brand system. Like that's kind of its main purpose here, and that's the main reason why people use them, is to kind of keep this cohesiveness again. So that begs the question of, okay, what kind of components and things, what library objects should I create? And I want to talk about this in the context of something known as atomic design. This might be something that you're familiar with if you've done any like research into UX or anything like this. Um, the system online was created by a guy named Brad Frost. He actually has a whole book about it that you can actually read for free on his website. That's where I pulled a lot of these images from that you'll see here across these slides. But this is really an intuitive way to look at interface design by borrowing some concepts from chemistry. So you're using some mental models that we have from chemistry about atoms, molecules, organisms, and then leading that into creating templates and pages. Now, what does this all mean? Basically, atomic design is um, and then apparently I had a secondary slide there. If you kind of look at where atomic design is borrowing from and what it's kind of using as its structure, it says, in the natural world, atomic elements combine together to form molecules. These molecules can combine further to form relative complex organisms. Atomic design is a methodology that's composed of five distinct stages working together to create interface systems in a more deliberate and hierarchical manner. The five stages of the atomic design are, as I listed earlier, atomic atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. So it's basically this idea of you have these smaller elements that help you build larger ones, and that kind of spreads out across. And we'll kind of see that as we look at our library objects today, how that all works within Lectora and how you may want to use them. Now, you may use some of these, you may use all of them. It's really up to you, but it's just this idea of creating this mental model and system in your head of how you're going to work together and break these things down. Rather than trying to eat the whole elephant, you're kind of breaking it down by little bits and pieces there. So, what do each of these different stages mean? So, what are atoms? So, if the atoms are basic building blocks of matter, then atoms of our interfaces serve as the foundational building blocks that comprise all of our user interfaces. So, these include some of your basic elements, such as form labels, um, inputs, buttons, and others that can be broken down without ceasing to be functional. So anything that's like at its base level and functional, that's what you're going to get. And yes, you will get the PowerPoint after the session as well. We'll be sure to include that. So like these are the basic units of all of what you're creating. Now, where does this go into then? What's a molecule? So a molecule is your next largest thing. So interfaces, molecules are relatively simple groups of UI elements functioning together as a unit. So if you see the example over here, this is a search bar from a website, right? So you have your button, you have the text field, the input field, and then you have the label at the top. So that's creating your molecule because all those things work together to create one function. And so by bringing those atoms together, so the atoms being the button, the text field, and this input field here, you're bringing those all together to form this molecule. Now from there, you have organisms. So organisms are relatively complex UI components composed of groups of molecules and or atoms and or other organisms. these organisms form distinct sections of an interface. So again, looking at the example that he provided here, this is your top header of a website, right? So it contains that molecule that we just saw, that search bar with that text field, that input field, or that text, and then that input field, and then that button. But it also contains this menu over here to the left, which has the different links to the different pages of the website. So that's coming together then to create one section. And again, you'll see examples of this in Lectora. Next, we have our templates. So this is essentially a template. It's our page level objects that place components into a layout and articulate the design's underlying content structure. So kind of building again on this example, you now have that header bar, but then below it, you start to have your other content on that page. And so you have a spot for like a hero image, a few different text blocks. You got other image placeholders. You got a video block there. So all these different things kind of coming together to create a more complex structure. But at this point, it's still just a structure. You're not actually putting content into it, as opposed to pages, which are taking that template a step further and including some sort of placeholder like content that could be, reminiscent of the real content. So if you look here, we have that hero image that's replaced now, not by, it's no longer a placeholder. It's now has this image of the mountain, and each of these image blocks are taken up by different images. And then you have that video, which is now represented by an actual video there. So it's just creating something to kind of showcase what that layout could be used for, that template could be used for to create these pages. And again, you may create different things like this as far as you're creating these elements within Lectora as well. So with that being said, so that's kind of foundational work for us there. Let's take a look at these in context and in action of and within Lectora. So for today, I will be using Lectora Online. Just note that this functionality does also work, um, again, virtually identical outside the fact that you don't share the objects with anybody else in Lectora Desktop. So it doesn't matter which one you're using, the same principles apply there. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're looking at this. I just am a typically use Lectora Online for most of my workflow, so that's where I'm at. So, okay, so when we're like starting to create library objects, I'm not going to walk you through like each of these interactions and how I built them in this webinar. We're going to actually ask you later on today to let us know which ones you might want to see built in a webinar like this, or maybe in a blog or something like that. We haven't quite decided that yet. So keep that in mind as we look at this, is kind of pick out your favorite one out of some of these things that we're going to show you. But what I did here is I took one of our base templates from our asset library and modified it. So just so you kind of know like where this is coming from. So if you've never used the template library before, that's a built-in feature here in Lectora in both desktop and online. So if you kind of know the history of ELB learning, specifically when we were e-learning brothers back in the day, our whole business was around creating these templates for other tools. And so when we purchased our own authoring tool, we still continued to create templates. And these are still available as part of Lectora, as part of the Gold Suite that includes Lectora and MicroBuilder in it. But in this case, like I use this inner course corporate course starter, and you'll see some things that are reminiscent of this. I did modify this one a lot, but you'll see that some of this kind of picks up on these same styles here. So you'll see that here in just a little while on how I went about creating that using this template as kind of my base, at least on a few of these. Some of these interactions you'll see that I have in here. Those were ones that I created myself, but you'll kind of see the basis there was this template. And you can kind of see that structure reminiscent here. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you. But this actually brings up one big, like, I think time-saving concept that I'm going to bring up for you as you use this for your team. Is one of the best ways I think to build these out, specifically as you're building them out initially, trying to build out this whole cohesive set of different interactions and layouts and things that work together and different components. I do recommend like having one person build them in a big file like this and then saving them out, or having a small team do that. Purely that way you kind of, again, can kind of see things cohesively, can see how things piece together before you start breaking them apart into these different pieces that we talked about, those atoms, molecules, and organisms specifically, right? And so that's what I did here is I took that template, pulled in my other stuff that I wanted to use that I built before, and then started to modify this and then create this style that we have today. So it's fairly basic, kind of minimalist style here. Grays and blues kind of working together here. But let me just walk you through this file just from the beginning so that way you get an idea. So we start out with our little title slide here as we get started. We go on to our objective slide, which is always important to have in an e-learning course. Then we'll move on to just a couple of basic layouts. So in this case, the 50/50, so image on one side, content on the left. And you'll notice that this is reminiscent of what we call a page within Atomic Design. So this just shows you, okay, here's a placeholder image, here's some content, but it's just still a template at this point too. It's not real content for us. Same thing here as we put in, let's compare three little page setup there. And now we get into more interactive type things. So this is a tabbed click to reveal. So here at the top, and this is actually has a forced order to it. So I have to look at step one before I can get on to step two, and step three, and step four. And now I can continue on to my next page. This interaction here being just a little hotspot or image with some hotspots on it. So I start clicking through these. Gives me a little pop-up here. Again, this image here, this would be reminiscent again of a page in that atomic design principle there, where I'm given, some placeholder content there. This is obviously not the image for this particular content. Now, as I move forward here, you won't hear any sound from this, but this is a video and actually a very old video of me. It's very orange. If you did notice, like my whole, like all the lighting and everything's there. And I'm vamping here for a second just because midway through this video, it's actually going to pause us. So this is using something known as sync events. I actually do have a blog out there that describes how to build this. So if you're looking for that, you actually can find that in our blog on elblearning.com. But here I'm presented with a couple choices. And what's actually kind of cool about this one is if you get the wrong choice, it actually has you restart the video and try again, because one of the main things that this particular function is used for is to kind of make sure people are actually listening to your video. And so you might want to have them retry before they actually can move on. And if you notice, like the navigation down here is disabled, so I can't move ahead until I get the correct answer here. Well, it looks like I missed rebranding that button, so I'll have to go back and do that before we send this out. But it's going to continue to play this video here for us. And then once that's done, it's going to then let us go on to our next page. So there it enabled our navigation again. And this is another click to reveal that I'm calling just a 5-topic click to reveal here. So as you click on each of these different topics, it's going to show you some different information about each of them. And then once you visited all 5, it's going to enable the navigation for you to move on. And then we have a content carousel here. So as we click on these different buttons, we'll be able to move through the order here. Now, what I actually really think is pretty cool about this one is I've actually figured out logic to where like you can go backwards. So it's like you can go both directions here. And as I get to the end of the order here, so like this counter here has to hit 6 at least once, I can then go on to the next page, which happens to be just a simple knowledge check. And I can't remember the actual answer on this one, but go ahead and push it there. There's a little bit of feedback for us as well. And then we're on to our quiz, which in this case is just showing some simple examples of like true, false, multiple choice. I'll fill in the blank here, which we go ahead and just type the word blank in there. Selected from the drop-down list, so multiple choice, but just with a different input style there. And then the multiple response. So like this is just purely here to show some different options for that quiz. And then as you get through there, you have some quiz results page, which you have a pass and failed page in this particular item here. So now let's start breaking this down. So right now, this file has just been created. So this is something that I built over the last couple of days. I haven't had the chance to build it into library objects yet. So I'm going to walk you through how I do that. So you get an idea of how I organize that, how I work together, how these things work together for you. And then we'll see how they work as, kind of follow-ups to our follow-up to we'll follow up and see how these work together to build our courses here. So um, you'll notice right here at the top, I have some particular like theme elements and fonts and things. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this additional fonts tag right here. So this is an HTML extension. If you're unfamiliar with Lectora, this is actually how we embed fonts here. And so my particular way of doing that, I just put in a code snippet from Google Fonts. You can actually just copy this directly from Google Fonts and throw this in here. If you're using corporate fonts where you have the actual like TTF, OTF, or WOOF file. I can't remember what there's another format as well. You can actually attach those as well to this. But this just gives me all the fonts I may want to include that Lectora does not include standard or are not system fonts on someone's system. So like in this case, I actually have quite a few here. I used only one in this particular course, but if you actually look through what this one entails, it actually gives you a variety of different fonts to it. It's a little hard to see there, but you'll understand here in a second. So I'm going to create this, and so this would be what I would consider an atom. So like this is its lowest functional element. Now this one's kind of unique because it then applies to the rest of the course when it's added into it. So you could see it as one of these other objects types too, but in this case, this is the lowest form that it can possibly take. So I'll go ahead and right click this, and you'll notice here that there's the option to save as library object. So we'll go ahead and save that. And what I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm actually going to create a new folder, and we're just going to call this Fig Tree Corporate. Now, Fig Tree is actually the name of the font that I used within this file. It's one of my favorites. You'll actually notice it is part of the Learning Lab Live template as well that I use for my slides. It is one of my favorite fonts at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and call it Fig Tree Corporate, and I'm going to just save this as additional fonts here, and then hit save. So that way it's going to then go in there for me. I might need to retitle it here real fast. Big tree additional fonts. We'll go ahead and hit save there. Or it's just deciding it. Let me try that one more time. I think my internet might be slow today. Okay, so Fig Tree Corporate here. We'll go ahead and hit save. Okay, so this is where I give my usual live television. Sometimes things go wrong speech. Um, that should be saving right there. So that's strange. Let me try something else here. So my next level up here, I am actually going to pull all three of these together into what we would consider, in this case, probably more of that organism level. So like you're taking some molecules, which are these navigation buttons here on their own, and coupling that with these elements here to then say this as a library object that we will call uh, Big Tree Theme. And we're going to hit save there. Um, Give me one moment. I think I might have actually. Um, so again, sorry, live television. If you didn't know this, there's a lot of like organization settings, and one of them actually can disable the ability to um, export projects if you're disable the export your projects. That's turned on. Let me go ahead and just toggle that on and then toggle it off again, just to be sure that's not somehow carrying over there. And that disabling the export project also disables the ability to create library objects too. So, okay, something is not working right here. Let me go ahead and just close out this tab and we'll try. I'm just going to log out and come back in. I apologize, folks. Again, doing this all live here for you. Sometimes things in software, the internet bogs out on me or something does not work as well. So let me go ahead and pull this back up here and we'll give this another go. So I'll go ahead and grab these elements again, go ahead and right click, save as library object. And it does appear that they actually saved on me. That's interesting. We'll have to see what that looks like here in just a second. We'll call this fig tree theme. So that must have been something on my end that created a glitch there. So I'll go ahead and save that. We'll say yes, we'll replace that. So um, there we go. So we have that saved there for us. Now we'll go ahead and save each of these pages as a library object as well. So like in this case, I'll go ahead and save this as a um, title layout. We'll just go ahead and save this as fig tree title layout here. Let's put it to the end here, just to give it the same similar naming structure there. Same thing with the objectives page here. Now, most likely what I'd actually end up doing with these particular pages, since I know that like a title page and an objectives page would all be part of the kind of base template, I would probably just include them in that here in just a second, but just for the sake of today, we'll go ahead and save these all as our library objects that we'll use to create a course in a minute. So go ahead and save that there. And save that all there. Okay. Now on our different interactions here, you got a couple of different options on how you can work these together. You can either save the different components here. So like for instance, like any of um, and the actions or things that work together for this particular object, you could save those together, or like maybe you didn't want to have um, the page title or subtitle there, or maybe you want those just as an object, which I actually think I will save this as a molecule for me, so that way I can use this later. So I'll just say page title, fig tree as well. Get that into the fig tree corporate folder here, and we'll save that there. So that gives me that element on its own. And then I could also save the rest of these, which are kind of the functional bits of this, um, as its own as well. So if I say, okay, save as library object, I can say int fig tree tab interaction only. Okay. And save that as part of my fig tree there. And so that's going to give me just that component. So like I could go back in and rebuild this page, which I'll show you that in a second. Um, and kind of so on and so forth for the rest of these. Now I will just save the rest of these as the pages themselves as a library object, just to save on some time here. And when I get to the quiz, I'm actually going to just save that on its own as well to kind of save that there. So you can see you can create different pages. You can pull out different elements if you want to. Um, and create these different options for you. So but like this one in the past, like this is actually a new version of this content carousel that I built for specifically for this webinar. And I also have a customer that's interested in learning more about it, so I decided to make some modifications to it. This one's another one where you could just save, this bottom bit as the carousel as a different piece, and you have this element here. I'm not going to do that. We're going to do that with the tabbed interaction there. And then we'll save this last one as our fig tree knowledge check. Go ahead and make sure that that gets in the folder. So we'll save that there. And then I'm just going to save this whole thing as a single object here. So you see multiple pages here. And I'll go ahead and save that. So you can see like I brought together different styles of components and things together. So that way it makes this a little bit easier. Now, again, if I was going to build this I think really what I would do, what I'd end up doing is let me go ahead and we're going to create a copy of this project here. So if you've never seen this in Lectora, so um, you do have the option to come in here and say, okay, I want to create a copy of this. And since I've already created a copy in the past, it's creating a second copy here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to delete some of these elements here from the template. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete all of those. That's going to may mess with some of the actions and things. You'll notice how that makes that a little more plain there. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this, delete this, delete this, delete, 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 and deleting all those. So I'm now down to just my kind of basic page layouts. Now, again, you probably would typically leave in the theme as well, but just for the sake of our demonstration, I'm not going to do that today. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to hit file. Um, where is it? Save options, and I'm going to save project as template here. So I'm actually going to just name this Fig Tree Corporate. So this is creating this as a template for me now. So now when I go to create a new project, I'm going to have the option here underneath the templates option here to say Fig Tree Corporate right there. And we'll go ahead and create a new one. We'll just leave it named that since I don't have another project named that at the moment. And we're going to go ahead and pull that together. So you see that that creates a file that looks very much like what we just saw. Now, this is obviously not going to work as a course right now. So let's go ahead and use these library objects to put it all together. So in this case, I'm going to come over here to library objects. And I think my theme ended up somewhere else here. Picture theme right there. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. Now you notice where I'm selected in the Project Explorer, I'm selected on the actual project name. That means that's going to add this to the project level. So now you'll see that this has applied this theme to the entire page. So you can kind of see how that works. Again, taking that atomic design example again, where you have these different pages, but then you have these molecules and organisms that you can add to it to create more structure. So that's what I just did there. Now, to create a new page here, I'm going to go ahead and add a page. Now, you notice that like my background color here is set. I'm going to go ahead and call this my tabbed click to reveal. So we'll just kind of use that name there. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in the page title. So I'm going to import that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the tab interaction only here. So that's going to bring that in as well. At least that should have. Okay. There we go. Now, something does not look quite right about this. I must have not clicked on the background when I uh, selected everything to pull in, but you'll notice that all of my actions came in. It gave me a notice that all the variables would come in because apparently I had tried it. Maybe needed to give it a second to import, but it looks like my little background that was here, I probably should have, clicked on that when I selected it to bring that in. Just a miss on my part there. But you'll notice that like all the actions, variables, everything came over to create this. So if we come in here, we can kind of see that interaction there. Now, this one thing that this was missing that did not get pulled in here is actually there are some actions at the page level that were going to set the state of some of these buttons. So like on step 2, we're going to set that to disabled. We're going to add another action to set the state of step 3 to disabled as well. And same thing on step 4. So we're going to set state of step 4 to disable. Now, what this is doing is when you come onto the page here, once the page shows, it's actually going to set these to disabled. And as I select the button, Again, this is creating that forced order for me. So that way I do have to look at each of the three and then I can continue on. So I need to go back and get that background again, for the sake of time and things today. I'm not going to worry too much about that. We're just going to continue on and just kind of show you how to insert some of these other objects here. So like if we look at that one there, we can come in here and pull in, okay, maybe we'll pull in our question pop-up next here. So you see that added that full page there. Again, adds all the different elements to it. It's ready to go for me. We'll go ahead and do the carousel here. Okay, so those are all part of the file there for me. And then the question pop-up, I already did that one. Did the content carousel. I must have saved some of the other ones just in the base folder here. Yep, so image with hotspot. Go ahead and import that one. And I am missing one. I think it's the 5 topic click to reveal fig tree. Yep, import that one. And then I'll add in the knowledge check. And lastly, I'll put in my test. So this is just to show you that like this is how fast you can put this all together. Now we've been doing this for just a couple of minutes, and we now have like that course already rebuilt that we just that I spent the last couple of days working on, and that's all been brought in as this file. Now again, there's some errors on my part where I didn't select the right objects. I'll have to go back and fix that or add those in. But now it's just about modifying the content within these to then match whatever my course topic is, which I don't have a prepared one to kind of show you that working in order there for you. Um, but that's really like how these are used is you just kind of start piecing these together. So like again, if you needed another, oh, say 50/50 layout here, you kind of have two options. You either just, copy this one, paste that below, and you can work with that and start replacing all that content, or you can come over here to library objects, pull that in, but this is all right at your fingertips. So you can kind of think of this as maybe a persistent clipboard in some ways, where you can just kind of bring everything back as you had it before. The other way to think about it, if you use the UX concept, so this is all kind of building those typical like fundamental building blocks like we did with the talking about in the context of that atomic design. But this is also something known as a component library um, as part of that principle. So you can kind of think about it in those different ways. But overall, it's meant to make you faster at your development, but also keep consistency across things. So now that way you can just come in here again and modify some of these and make those happen. So that's kind of the demonstration there. Again, I know like just due to time, I didn't get a chance to go through um, how to build any of these interactions that I put in there. I know that some people are probably interested in that particular aspect. So what we're going to do is we're going to put up a new poll here, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you guys what those different options were again. Um, and what we'd just like to know is, hey, are any of these ones that most ones you're most interested in seeing built, maybe in a live session like this? So when we're looking at the tabbed click to reveal, that was that one that we kind of threw in here. So that's this guy right here. Of course, it actually would have that background to the box there. The image with the hotspot, that's this one right here, where you have the different hotspots on the image that pop up as different content boxes. Um, the 5 topic click to reveal has the buttons that have the different states to it that then you click on and pulls that up there. The content carousel is this one right here where you have the arrows and it kind of flows through the different pieces of content. And then the test as well is another option here, like if you want to learn how to build a test. Knowledge checks are very similar, so that's why we only included the tests there, so we could cover both of those as well. And same concept, because it's using the same features within Lectora, just slightly differently. So yeah, you have the your quiz with the different quiz questions and things in there. But just like which one of these would you be most interested in seeing built live, learning more about? If there's something else that you would like to like learn about Lectora um, or something you'd like to see built as well, like how would I do this? Feel free to put that in the chat as well, and we'll happy to record those and take those back as notes too. We do have some time here for some questions if anybody's interested. Oh, everyone likes the content carousel. It looks like that one is a resounding winner, so we may see more of that one later. Um, and that's actually pretty astounding. That's like two-thirds of everybody who want to see that one. Um, that one seems sense to be the one that customers seem to like as well when I talk to them about those things. Um, so we might see some more content about this particular one here um, as we move forward. So again, feel free to ask any questions in here, um, and I'll kind of let that go as I kind of talk about a couple of things. So if there's questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or anything in the chat today as well. But just kind of wrapping things up here, and wait, is it possible to have dynamic course content? The content is dynamically updated from the library. If you mean like the library of library objects, so that way if you update something there, it updates across all your courses. There's not really a way to do that because essentially when you insert those objects into a particular course, it's creating a new, I guess, version, a new idea of that. And so it's kind of hard to identify that across courses. So we haven't currently implemented that across any currently, but it is something that has been brought up before, something we've been discussing, but currently, no, it's not a possibility to be dynamic like that. Are the content carousels accessible ADA wise? I have not tested mine yet to be sure. That is actually part of my plan. I just did not have time. Um, if you notice, there are a couple things that I did with that one to kind of make this more visually interesting, like this little like progress tracker here, but I also left the ticker here. Um, Again, I'm not an accessibility expert. I don't ever claim to be, but I have friends that are here at ELB. And so I'm going to run it past them and some other tests before I can really answer that one to make sure that it is. Uh, but um, but I'm trying to do my best to make sure that I can get all these interactions up to an accessible standpoint. I just again didn't have enough time to verify that before the training here. But since we'll see the content carousel come back, I'll be able to do that. So share that. So, what is the best practice to extract common content from two existing similar courses into library objects and then link back from the library to the two courses? I'm not entirely sure I understand the question there. Um, so are you trying to like hyperlink back to something in those courses? Um, I'd have to know a bit more about what the use case has been to really answer that one. I'm sorry, I just don't quite understand it. So I think like the only way to create a library object that does like update if you change something without library but want to start using. I would just go ahead and extract it like I just did in this course. So just creating those library objects from there and throwing those into the library. Um, if you're trying to like make them link back so that way if you update those other courses that the objects will update, that's not necessarily possible. The only way that that is like if you use a HTML like a web window in there and you update the content that's accessible at the link that the web window is accessing, then that's possible, but you get into all sorts of other issues with that. And um so it's just a matter of like extracting all of that and then starting to use those to build is really what you're looking for. And but your extraction process looks exactly what I showed today. And if you have further questions in the next slide, my information will be up there for you to contact me. I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards as well. But while we're waiting for some last questions to come in here too, just wanted to wrap things up by thanking you all for coming today. As you know, like this is a monthly series that we've been doing um, around our different products. So each month we kind of rotate through different ones to talk about different aspects of the ELB learning product suite known as Learning Creation Studio. Um, so next month, after some popular demand, we are actually going to be looking how to build a gamified learning experience in arcades. So some of you might be familiar with the training arcade, which we did a webinar back in. This is one of the first ones that we did. So it was like August or so. Um, this is the other side of that product where there's the option to kind of build everything into a gamified arcade there. So that one's coming up on February 17th. You'll be able to register for that. Add some links that we'll have for you. And then um, this is kind of a shameless plug because I am doing another webinar next month. I usually just do one, but I'm doing a second one on for ELB on February 26th, so the following week. And this is going to be on our new role play feature in not Lectora in Rehearsal. Um, this is something that we talked about in another Learning Lab live session a few months ago when we released it into beta. It's now going into full release, and so it's changed quite a bit. So we're going to be showcasing that and its capabilities during that webinar on the 26th, and I will be presenting on that one. So just kind of a shameless plug. If you want two doses with me in February, you have that option, or if you really want one or not, that's okay too. But you have those options there. And lastly, here, again, there's my information. If you feel like you want to ask me more questions or connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so there. I'm happy to connect and chat as well. And then that QR code there will lead you to the recordings of our previous sessions that have been happening with Learning Lab Live. So, with all that being said, I'm not seeing any other questions come through at this time. So we'll go ahead and give y'all a few minutes back in your day and hope to see you at another Learning Lab live session here in the future.